All right, folks, glad to have you here. I'm, of course, in New York, where last night Harry Belafonte was honored by the Robert Kennedy Human Rights Gala, and so I had a good time there as well. While I was there, phone began to blow up, folks, with news of two African Americans caught up in sexual harassment allegations. PBS talk show host Tavis Smiley has been suspended over sexual misconduct allegations involving staffers that surfaced Wednesday. The New York Times is reporting hip-hop mogul Russell Simmons facing more rape allegations by 3 women. Talk about a stunning story. We already knew, of course, about Russell Simmons. That was a previous story done about him where the granddaughter of Lena Horne alleged that Russell Simmons had raped him. Now, 3 more women have stepped forward in this New York Times story, also in the Los Angeles Times. They also have a story out with regards to allegations against him as well. So we will get to all of that in our next segment. But first, Senate Democrats want Republicans to delay a vote on the tax overhaul bill until Alabama Senator Doug Jones officially gets seated. But Republicans say they want a vote as early as next week. Let's talk about that right now, of course, with our panel as well. Let me introduce who is in the studio. First and foremost, Scott Bolden is in the house. Scott, how you doing?
Good, real good, Roland.
All right, then, of course, Julianne Malveaux, she's in the house as well.
Good morning, Roland.
All right, then. And is my man Lenny there? So I have wrong information here as well. And, of course, we have Derek Holly here as well. Derek, how you doing?
I'm good, Roland. How you doing?
All right, first, folks, let's get to, again, all of the drama when it comes to sexual harassment and these allegations. First and foremost, PBS, again, has taken Tavis Smiley's show off of the air due to an investigation. They say he has, of course, jeopardized the standards of PBS. Tavis Smiley last night, though, spoke out on Facebook addressing these claims. All right, then. So we don't have the sound of Tavis's statement? All right, folks. In that Facebook posting, okay, here we go. Here we go. Here's Tavis Smiley speaking out.
Hi, I'm Tavis. I was as shocked as you were to hear of PBS's sudden announcement regarding my television program. Let me say at the outset that I have the utmost respect for all women, and I certainly celebrate the courage of those women who've come forth of late to share their own truth. But let me also assure you that I have never groped, inappropriately exposed myself, or coerced any colleague in the workplace ever in my 30-year career. PBS launched this so-called investigation of me without ever even telling me about it. I only learned of this investigation because former colleagues, former staffers, started to call me to tell me they were getting a phone call from some PBS investigator asking, number one, did Tavis ever make you feel uncomfortable in the workplace? And number two, can you give us other persons to call? Only after threatening a lawsuit did PBS investigators agree to sit down and talk to me for 3 hours. And even then, their minds must have been made up, because almost immediately after that session ended, this story broke in Variety. PBS investigators refused to look at any of my documentation, refused to talk to any of my current staffers, refused to give me the names of any of my accusers, and refused to give me any semblance of due process. It is clear that this has gone too far, and I, for one, intend to fight back. PBS overreacted, and they launched a sloppy investigation. It's time for a real conversation in this country about where the lines are, about how men and women can engage each other in the workplace. And I look forward to actively participating in that conversation.
Again, that was a video posted last night by Tavis on his Facebook page. Now, according to Variety, who first broke this news, as you heard him say, the veteran journalist, media personality, engaged in sexual relationships with multiple subordinates who felt their employment was linked to having sex with him. They say the working environment was verbally abusive and threatening. Many feared retaliation. In February, a former producer for the show published a piece in The Observer describing an environment filled with misogynistic behavior and womanizing. Now, PBS, again, is halting distribution of the show. And again, Smiley is speaking out on this as well. This comes just weeks after PBS show host Charlie Rose was fired over sexual misconduct charges. Also, several other PBS personalities in New York. One resigned, a couple of others were let go as well, and plus Garrison Keillor, of course, a PBS host for a number of years, was let go in Minnesota as a result of sexual harassment allegations. Also, Russell Simmons facing more drama, more rape allegations. The New York Times is reporting that 3 women all came on the record saying that they were raped by Simmons in incidents dating back to the late 1980s. The Los Angeles Times is also reporting accounts from 5 more women on the record who allege Simmons raped them in the 1980s. Simmons is denying all of these accusations. In a statement, this is what he said. I vehemently deny all these allegations. These horrific accusations have shocked me to my core, and all of my relations have been consensual. Now remember, in November, Simmons announced that he was stepping down from his companies after writer Jenny Lumet, of course, she is the granddaughter of Lena Horne, alleged that he sexually assaulted her in 1991. In addition to our panelists, joining us in D.C. is Torrin Ellis, diversity strategist and author of Rip the Resume. First and foremost, let's go to all of the folks on our panel. Will deal with both of these, and that is when you look at these allegations, Torrin, against Tavis Smiley. He says that he did not, that the investigation was given to Variety shortly after his interview ended. They are saying, other allegations saying that he had sexual relations with employees. Is that separate or different than sexual harassment, engaging in sexual relations with staffers?
The short answer is, Roland, yes, it is. In an environment where you where you create a hostile work environment, if you feel obligated to have sex or that's par for course, then yes, it's a hostile environment. And what these men are saying and what Tavis is saying about the investigation, that's pretty normal or how an investigation takes place. Now, I don't know whether it's sloppy or not. He may not like how they did it, but an investigation isn't really about defending yourself. But if you have sexual relations with women and subordinates, inherent in that sexual relationship is power, which is at the base.
The other piece of note. Just a second. Just a sec.
Hold on 1 second. Julian, hold up 1 second. I need everybody to settle down. Scott finished.
We just got started.
Scott finished. I'm going to Torrin, then I'm going to Julian. Go ahead.
At the base of all of this is power. And if you're having sex with subordinates, whether it's said or not, you may think it's consensual, but it certainly isn't if they feel that they're compelled to do this because this is par for course. So PBS can suspend you, whether it was consensual or not, whether you couch it in harassment or not. It's fundamentally wrong and has no place in the workplace.
It doesn't have any place. It has absolutely no place in the workplace. And like Tavis said in an article on December 1st, he said history is littered with philosophical truth tellers that unfortunately we will know and appreciate far too late. And so in this particular case, you know, for Tavis and for Russell and for so many others, they just have to go through the process. They have to deal with exactly what's been put in front of them, and they have to make sure that they are truthful. They need to come forward and make sure that they can address these situations and do that in a timely manner.
But even if this is
Julian?
Even if this is consensual sex in the workplace, it still is inappropriate because of the fact that it has an impact on the other people in the workplace. In other words, if you have 7 subordinates and you're having consensual sex with one, others know about it. What is the impact of that on their workplace
relationship? It's never consensual in the workplace. It's never consensual
well,
in the
Scott,
workplace.
I'm talking, Scott, and I agree with you. I do agree with you. However, I do not agree with you interrupting me.
But here's the deal, though. First of all, Scott, you say it's not consensual. First of all, 2 adults can have a consensual relationship in the workplace, but when you are a superior, when you are the CEO of a company, that changes things because, as Julian said, Derek, the reality is someone could say, oh, you're giving this person a raise, you're giving this person a promotion as a result of your relationship. You're giving them more assignments, which could allow for upward mobility, and that's what you're dealing with here.
Exactly. I agree with you. And the thing is you can't do that in the military either. You know, ranking officers can't mess with lower ranking. It's fraternizing, and it's the same thing in the workplace. So the bottom line is you can't do it, and it's gotten out of control. But I do agree with you, Roland. You can have two adults can have you know, have agreed to having a relationship in the workplace.
But it's not a good idea.
It's not a good idea.
But Scott, one second. I need everybody to breathe.
Roland, you need to be in the studio today.
I know y'all getting a little extra that I'm in New York, but breathe.
No.
Scott's out of control.
Second of all, one second.
Okay.
1 second. Scott, let's deal with this. And Scott, then Torin, your superior. But here's the other piece. PBS distributed the show. PBS did not pay for any of the production. It was all done through Tavis's production company.
Right.
And so the question then becomes, if they're distributing the show, what oversight do they actually have if this is his production company, his staff, he's paying the people?
Their airways.
What's their role in this?
Well, you have to look at their contract, but I'm sure they have standards in that contract. That is the distribution contract. And if you look at that, it will have standards in there that, notwithstanding the fact that they don't produce the show, that to publicize it, to distribute it, they have their standards that their contractors like Tavis have to meet. And so they have every right to investigate. They have every right to say, no, we don't want to distribute a show where the host and the CEO of that show engages in sexual relationships with subordinates that could amount to harassment. Because watch this, if someone sues Tavis Smiley, they could also include a PBS,
that's right.
And that's a risk factor for PBS that they can't ignore. And so, sure, whether they get dismissed from the lawsuit or not is a whole other story, but they certainly have opened themselves up.
Torin, when you look at some of the allegations also against Russell Simmons at his yoga facility in Los Angeles, plus in the New York Times story, these were employees. You had two women who say they were artists with the label, who alleged that he sexually assaulted them, raped them. And then you have the woman in LA who was a manager of his yoga studio who talked about how he sexually harassed women there as well. So what you're dealing with here, you're dealing with individuals, again, subordinates in the workplace.
Yeah, well, one thing that Scott said that I want to touch on, you know, from a social responsibility and a branding standpoint, you have the decision for PBS to delay distribution, and it makes sense. And, you know, what Tavis has to understand is that he may also lose sponsors through this particular issue. And so that is a very big deal, if you will. And as it relates to Russell, I read an article that says up to 9 women right now are accusing him of some sort of impropriety. And unfortunately for him, when these allegations are as recent as February of 2017, he's got a problem on his hand. And so you can't necessarily rely on the Uncle Rush stance and posture when you've been this individual now, when you've been an individual for the last 20, 25 years. He's got a lot of reckoning that he's got to deal with.
You know, this Roland...
Julian, to the point, the question I raised, and that is, again, in the case of Russell Simmons, where 2 women were artists, and he was a person responsible for their careers. One of the women who alleges that he raped her said he was her manager. Then you have, of course, the yoga studio in Los Angeles. I mean, again, this is a case where an individual has control over the careers of individuals underneath them. Julian, go ahead.
You know, that's why this is about power. It's not really about sex. Everybody's got, you know, get the salacious notion of sex in there, but it really is about power. I can do this to you. It's like what Selma Hayek has said very recently about Harvey Weinstein. I can do this to you because in a capitalist patriarchy, implicitly what is being said said is, I own you. So, and many men, not all men, but many men feel that way when they're in positions of power. What we're seeing now, Roland, is a sea change in the way we're looking at these things. These are things we used to wink and nod at. Just about every woman has a story she can tell about some form of harassment or inappropriate comment or something like that. My generation, we learned just to laugh it off. I mean, just, you know, some fool says something, you know, go away, dude. And a lot of women didn't feel that they could do that. But those of us who felt empowered, you know, you cuss somebody out. You tell them, don't put your hand on me again, or something. Oh yeah, big time. But the point is that, but we winked and nodded at it. We didn't ever think of, let me report this to HR or anything, because it was just so usual. But now sisters are coming up, women are coming up and saying, this is not usual. It's inappropriate. It diminished me in the workplace. It may have hurt my career, like the woman who basically said she can't find a job in Washington because she complained against Fahrenheit, the Texas congressman. So, you know, we're seeing this sea change, and it's an important sea change, but one of the things that Tavis said that we really need to pay attention to is there are nuances. And there are lines that we need to draw. He had no business, if he had sex with an employee, he had no business doing it. But at the same time, what happens when I decide that I'm going to hit on Scott? Well, I wouldn't do that.
All right.
Right there on the air, Roland. She said it right on the air. You saw it.
Folks, I've got to go to a break. Torrin, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh, my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no.
That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
News One Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.